In general, I tend to stay sheltered in my world of mechanical things, deductive reasoning, logic, right? Stuff that is the cornerstone of machines, right? Working with machines, understanding machines. But since we started doing some videos that went off like the typical hot rod beaten path, and we did some stuff on EVs and then the gas vapor things, I've become exposed to a level of disconnect and illogic and pure idiocy that I really didn't think existed, but it does. And it comes to me in like the comments drive me absolutely out of my mind. It was the EV people first. Now, let's get this straight, okay? If you choose to own and operate an EV, that's awesome. More power to you. They're fine. If an EV fit my life, I would have an EV. I have nothing against EVs. What I have a problem with is the idiocy, and it's on an individual level, a corporate level, and a governmental level, that's like, everything's going to be electric. Everybody's going to drive electric. Like, for instance, how are these people all going to run electric cars, right? Could you see the extension cords all over? How many people live in apartments in this country, in this world? And everybody's going to go to EVs. Tell me how you're going to charge this thing. How is the person who lives in that apartment going to charge that car? Want to explain this one to me? Everybody's going to go EV, right? Idiots. It's not doable. Unless, of course, somebody plans on killing off 3/4 of the Earth's population, it ain't going to happen. Not to mention things like that traffic jam that happened in Virginia. How many people would have died in that traffic jam? Could you imagine just dying because you're in a traffic jam? Because the battery in their EV went dead after an hour of running the heat. It's idiocy. It's lunacy. Okay? But again, nothing against people has completely different than somebody who just chooses to own and operate an EV. Then there's the gas vapor people. All right, so we did the video last week where we tested one of these vapor systems on this car, and we got negative results out of the system. And I made sure to make it as fair as possible. I didn't even drive it myself. I had my friend Al, Mopar Al, I had him drive the thing so that like my own prejudices couldn't subconsciously sneak into the results or the testing and jade the results one way or another. I made sure he didn't know. But yet you read in the comments and it's like, well, you should have tested it over, this range and that range, and you should have put tankfuls of gas through it. No, because there's no way to accurately, measure what this thing would have done. Oh, well, you can't do a test like that just driving around the building. How many people just drive around buildings? How many people drive in cities? Just saying so the gas vapor thing will only work if you're out on the open road and there's no traffic and there's no stopping and there's no going. Most people drive in city or urban environments. So our test with this car going around this building 1/4 mile at a time was representative. And by the way, there was no variation in terms of traffic. Every lap he made, the road out here is very little traffic, and every lap he made, there was no having to wait for people to go or anything. There was out onto the road, a couple of 100 feet, and then back into the parking lot. So traffic didn't come into account. But again, see, I made the test as fair as humanly possible. But you had all of these people piling into the comments about, you can't test it this way, you can't test it that way, you can't test it the other way. I tested it the most fair and well-balanced way I could. And a lot of people are like, well, you can't do it with a carbureted car because a carbureted car, you have to change the jetting and blah, blah, blah. Well, it doesn't say that on the kit. And if it did say it on the kit, we would have done that. But it didn't say anything about that. It said it works across the board. So we put it on the car and we tested it across the board. It didn't work. So let's not even go there. Let's go now to the vapor people. There's like a whole cult of vapor people and I'm not even talking about the hydrogen people, and that's another thing entirely, right? But let's talk about the vapor people, because the vapor people are delusional. I mean, delusional. They're out there, okay? They do not have even the most basic understanding of how the internal combustion engine works. This one individual, and I won't say his name because I don't want to be a bully, I don't want to pick on him, right? But there's one guy who actually puts himself out there as an engineer. He calls himself an engineer, he calls himself an inventor. He's invented this vapor thing. We've talked about this particular deal in the past. But you go through his Facebook page, you can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. He has a Facebook page with his group, okay? And he makes a post. There's a post in there. We'll put it up just in case it gets deleted. Well, he's talking about the camshaft profile on this experimental engine that he's operating. And in it, he says he talked to the cam manufacturer, and the cam is ground with, wrap your head around this, guys. The cam is ground with 14 degrees negative overlap. Oh, I had to read that like 2 or 3 times before I understood what he was saying. Negative overlap. It has 14 degrees of negative overlap. Now, this is an engineer. There's a guy who calls himself an inventor and an engineer. And he has a camshaft ground with 14 degrees of negative overlap. What the hell is negative overlap? Right? I mean, science fiction people couldn't even come up with this. What the frick is negative overlap? And again, this overriding comment, this comment always comes up. Gasoline doesn't burn. Gasoline doesn't burn. Only vapors burn. I hate this stuff. All right, so all of you vapor guys, right, that insist that liquid gasoline does not burn, that only vapors burn. Oh, you can't burn liquid gasoline. It only has to be vaporized. Right here, look. Okay, so I'll open a choke, right? And here, I'm opening the throttle. See, the throttle's wide open. And look, I'm going to give this engine a nice, healthy dose of just pure gas. Look how much that's liquid gas. And it's completely bypassed the carburetor. Right now, there's a puddle of liquid gasoline laying in the bottom of the intake manifold and dripping into the cylinders. Okay, there's your liquid gasoline not burning, okay? Listen, guys, go get another hobby. You don't belong with cars. All right, I'm done with my ranting. I'm not going to rant anymore, right? So instead of talking about preposterous and absurd things that cannot work in the real world that we live in, let's shift the conversation. Let's get some productive brainstorming going in the comments instead of idiocy, okay? So, most people agree that better gas mileage, more efficient vehicles are better than inefficient vehicles. And we're in very strange times, and who the hell knows what's going to happen in the future. So, EVs, you've got your plug-in EVs, and you get your hybrids, and they have to deal with batteries. Batteries have a lot of issues, especially since they just die, right? You know, they're dead, they're expensive to replace, they have to be recycled or disposed of somehow or another. Batteries have a lot of problems. But what about, and you go back to these people who, oh, Stanley Meyer runs his car on water. Well, what if we were to create a heat-generated hybrid? And remember now, a lot of these vapor guys, the whole point of the vapor thing is to recover some of the lost heat, some of what's lost through the normal cycling of an internal combustion engine. So what if we were to take that heat and redirect it to boiling water, and then use either a reciprocating or turbine-style steam engine in the car. And General Motors actually experimented with this in 1969. They actually built a steam Chevelle. They were experimenting with the idea of steam power. They were trying everything. None of this stuff is new. All of this stuff has been done over, and it's been rehashed and tested and tested and tested. But what they did was they used a conventional steam engine feeding a modified internal regular V8. Actually, they cut a V8 down, a small block Chevy down to a 4-cylinder motor, and they fed that steam, and that's how it ran. But what if you were to take a regular gasoline engine and run the exhaust through a boiler, and then added as a hybrid system, like it says, either a reciprocating or a turbine steam engine, let's say directly in the driveline or attached to an axle, to supplement the internal combustion engine. So basically you would have a hybrid, but instead of using a battery, you'd be using the lost heat, that lost energy from the gasoline, to create steam to propel the car that way. Has anybody tried anything like this? Is it feasible? What are your thoughts on this? Has anybody given this type of thing any thought? Or are there any working examples? So instead of filling the comments with stupid things like, oh, you can't light liquid gas. Yes, liquid gasoline won't burn. Instead of filling the comments with idiocy, let's try filling the comments with good, solid, mechanically intuitive, practical things that we can do and maybe even experiment with as time goes on. Sorry for the rant if it was too much for some of you guys, but you know, I had to get it off my chest. And on top of that, I got this other thing. I got a notice the other day that there's a package coming from Green Technologies, some Green Technologies. They're sending me a package of things to test. Now I'm going to have, because I did that other thing, I'm going to have every ding-dong and inventor in the country sending me stuff because they want some kind of exposure. So I go on their YouTube channels, Green Technologies, something or other, I don't know what it is. And it's some product that he's got people endorsing it. Yeah, my engine had a rod knock and I got 4 miles to the gallon. I poured this shit and the rod knock went away and now I get 30 miles to the gallon. You think I'm making this up? This was an actual thing. So now they're sending me this stuff to test. You know what? Keep it. Don't send me this to test. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. Let's stick within the world of reality, yeah? I'll see you tomorrow.